Manual exposure. Professionals use manual control to expose their images or videos optimally. They are able to capture the best version of an image by setting all of the main parameters themselves, rather than relying on the camera to attempt to estimate and or guess what the most desirable image would be. Initially, it may seem difficult to grasp how changing the camera setting affects the overall look. However, in time, it becomes easier to immediately select the right settings. You will find that you will eventually produce better work by staying in the manual mode. Now, to expose a manual image, there are only 5 steps involved. First, you have to adjust the mode dial to M setting. Second, set an appropriate ISO speed. Third, set the aperture and the shutter speed. Fourth, focus the image. And fifth, press the shutter button to take the image. And now we need to talk about manual exposure for video. The manual exposure shooting mode for movies allows the camera person to set the key settings manually. The user can set the ISO speed, the aperture, and the shutter speed. Using the manual control isn't just for experts. It is useful for beginners to attempt to use manual controls because it is the only way to really learn how to use the camera to its full potential. Though it may be challenging, it is the challenge of trying to set the settings at the right level to gain an optimal exposure that makes the whole process fun and rewarding. In addition, using manual exposure will lead to results which are likely to be more interesting and cinematic as well. On the camera, there will be a dial, which corresponds to the shutter speed. There will also be a dial, which corresponds to the aperture. These may be the same dial. Rotate the dial or dials to set the appropriate settings. The shutter speed can usually be set to anywhere from 1/8,000th of a sec to 30 seconds. Generally, the maximum aperture will be around f1.8 and the minimum aperture will be around f16 or f22. The exact numbers will be dependent on the lens used. Bulb long exposure, 30 seconds plus. Interchangeable lens cameras have a bulb mode that allows the camera person to record long exposures. Recording a long exposure is useful in various circumstances. It is useful in low light environments such as night scenes. It is useful in creating a motion effect from a subject or object in motion. To take a long exposure, there are only 3 steps. First, you have to set the mode dial to B. Second, select an appropriate aperture setting. Third, depending on your camera model, you will activate the mode in one of 2 ways. Either you will have to press down the shutter button once to activate the mode and once to stop the exposure. Or you'll have to press down the shutter and hold it down as long as you want to expose the image. Note, you will need to use a tripod for this mode.